I will not venture to speak of anything, Paul said in chapter 15, except what Christ has worked in me to bring about the obedience of faith among the Gentiles. I won't venture to speak of anything except what Christ has worked in me. So all of His service of Christ is Christ's service to Him.
There's something really freeing about what John Piper says here. Just this deep confidence that even our serving is Christ serving us. I'm Dan Kruver. In this episode of Light and Truth, John Piper turns to Romans 12, verses 9 to 21, to help us see that whatever good comes from our lives, it's really God's grace at work. This message was originally delivered at The Cove in Asheville, North Carolina on July 28, 2007.
Outdo one another in showing honor. What does that mean? I think it means love. Well, first of all, what does show honor mean? And I think show honor means, because there are a lot of people who are not very honorable. In fact, none of us ultimately is honorable. We deserve condemnation. So how do you honor somebody? And the answer, I think, is you serve somebody as though they deserve being served. They might not deserve it, but you're going to serve them. You're going to count their needs greater than your own. So you serve them. You honor somebody by serving them. Treat them with words and deeds as worthy of your service. That's what Christ did when He died. We weren't worthy, but He served us that way. Now, how do you outdo somebody in showing honor? And I think the answer is you desire to serve more than you desire to be served. You outdo them in the sense that you want to, in this relationship, be a servant more than you want to be served. You want to show them as being worthy of this service more than you want to be shown worthy of their service. You won't reject their service. That's a hidden pride, to reject somebody's favors and kindness to you. But the goal here, and this is so beautiful in marriage, and when I'm doing premarital counseling, one of the things I like to say is there's one really good kind of competition. Outdo one another in showing honor. Compete with who can give the most. Who can lay down their life the most. Who can serve the most. So, humility again is the key here, isn't it? To that honoring. Verse 11. Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Now those first two elements. Don't be slothful in zeal, be fervent in spirit, could seem in some tension with each other. If you saw in the first one, don't be slothful in zeal, that is, don't be lazy, be a doer, be a hard worker, zealously, be pragmatic with zeal, then you might look at the next one and say, be fervent in spirit, and you think, well, there's another kind of person here. Fervent in spirit isn't the pragmatist, he's the poet. He's just all kinds of emotions that are ready to praise, and he leaves his room a mess. He doesn't practically do much helpful around here. But he sure brings a lot of energy to the worship service. And then the pragmatist, generally, these two kind of paradigms, the pragmatist person, work hard, get it done. If I was in Minnesota, I'd say good Scandinavian, unemotional, non-passionate, work for Jesus. And frankly, there's plenty of volunteers for the nursery, but the worship service is a drag. Onward, Christian soldiers. Work, work, work. But feel. Ew. That's dangerous. Now, I think what what we should do then with a verse like this, don't be slothful in zeal, be fervent in spirit, is see that Paul simply will not let either of us be content where we are. He's going to say to the pragmatist, I like your pragmatism. I like hard work. Sloth is not a virtue in the Christian church. So, good for you. However, I got a word for you. Namely, be fervent in spirit. The word, the English word fervent comes from the Latin fervens, which means boil. And this Greek word means boil. That's a real interesting etymological connection over into English. Boil in the spirit. You can imagine this pragmatist who doesn't ever feel anything saying, you want me to boil? Yes, I want you to boil. Or take the boiler over here and say, you know what? When you go to the post office at the school and the kids are all lining up to get in there and get at their little post offices, you need to not read your mail while you're standing at the post box. Just think of practical ways to be nice. Don't be so oblivious reading your love letter in front of your post box. 18 people trying to get at their mailboxes here, and you're so impractical, you're not loving people. So stop using your boiling worship orientation to be so practically unkind. I just think the Bible gets at you no matter where you are. It just won't let us be content with our Piper personality or your personality. He's going to say, okay, Piper, you got a personality, I'll use it, but you got some work to do. Got some edges to knock off here, and don't think that you are this way is okay by itself. Keep growing. You're 61, I got work to do on you. Serve the Lord. Now what that phrase adds is a focus to the first two. Right? Don't be slothful in zeal. So go ahead and not be lazy and be a hard worker, zealously doing practical good things, and be fervent in spirit. Be a good boiler and make it all in the service of the Lord. So he's not just appealing for personality types here. He's after a certain kind of service to Jesus. Now, the question is, what does it mean to serve the Lord? And there are some interesting ways of getting at this in Romans and other books that Paul has written. Let me give you an example or two of what serving Jesus is. Romans 16:17. I appeal to you, brothers, to watch out for those who cause divisions and create obstacles contrary to the doctrine that you have been taught. Avoid them, for such persons do not serve our Lord Jesus, but their own appetites. Now these instances, I'm going to give you all of them, contrast with serving Jesus and not serving something else. And the first one is not serving your appetites. So when you contrast serve Jesus, not your appetites, you have to ask, what does it mean to serve an appetite? And isn't the answer, you serve an appetite when you give into it and make it your satisfaction? So I serve my appetite not by providing help to my appetite, but by caving in to my appetite and going ahead and indulging my appetite. Strange kind of service. And he says, you ought to be serving Jesus, not your appetite, which means that serving Jesus would be caving into Jesus, giving in to Jesus, indulging in Jesus, being satisfied with Jesus, enjoying Jesus, glutting yourself on Jesus. Surprising definitions of service show up. Here's another one. Ephesians 6:6. Not by way of eye service. He's telling servants how to relate to their masters. Not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but as servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart. Rendering service with a good will as to the Lord and not to man. So there, serving Christ is contrasted with pleasing people. So, be more interested in the approval of Christ than the approval of man. Don't be a people pleaser, be a Jesus pleaser. And then Romans 7:6. But now we are released from the law, having died to what held us captive, so that we serve not under the old written code, but in the new life of the Spirit. So serving Christ is not serving the law, it's serving Jesus. And I think that means come to Jesus first as a law fulfiller, not a law demander. Otherwise, the therefore at the beginning of chapter 12 will not work. So, the focus of our pragmatism and the focus of our boiling spirits is in being satisfied with Jesus, finding Jesus as the one whose approval means the most to us, and finding Jesus as our all-sufficient law fulfiller, as well as Romans 12 giver. I know how much more could be said about the serving of the Lord, because He really is the one who finally serves us. I will not venture to speak of anything, Paul said in chapter 15, except what Christ has worked in me to bring about the obedience of faith among the Gentiles. I won't venture to speak of anything except what Christ has worked in me. So all of His service of Christ is Christ's service to Him. This is why serving Jesus can never be thought of in terms of paying Jesus back for anything. Because all of your efforts to serve Him are a result of His enabling your service. So every step of service you take, you're going deeper in debt to His serving you. You're not paying Him back. You're going deeper in debt. Every step you take, He enabled you to take it. So another word of gratitude has to be paid. You never can pay Jesus back by serving Him. His service is always what is enabling your serving of Him. 1 Corinthians 15:10. By the grace of God I am what I am. His grace toward me was not in vain, but I worked harder than any of them. Nevertheless, it was not I, but the grace of God that was with me. So all my work for Jesus is Jesus' work for me. And my work for Him can never pay Him back, but only take me deeper in debt to grace. I am very, very happy that eternity will be a never-ending spiral into greater debt to grace. Every moment that I survive in eternity will be another gift of grace that I did not deserve. And my gratitude, therefore, for all eternity will have to grow. And there will be never any thought of finally evening the deal. He did for me, I did for him, even Stephen, never. Romans 12:12. Rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer. Now, reflect on those words. Rejoice, hope, patience, tribulation, constancy, prayer. One of them sticks out. You know, if you do those little puzzles and you're given 4 or 3 or 5 things, like, which one doesn't belong? Which one of these doesn't belong? Tribulation is unique because all the others are things we do. We rejoice, we hope, we're patient, we're constant, we pray. Tribulation is done to us. Now, the reason I just draw that out is to set this up, because I think tribulation in this little unit here forms the backdrop of everything else. It's not one of the number. It's the backdrop against which everything here happens. Do you remember what Theology 101 was in Acts 14? Paul plants these churches, Lystra, Derbe, Iconium, first trip. He turns around and comes back, just probably a few weeks later, maybe months, we don't know exactly. And he's teaching them in every church. What? Chapter 14, verse 22. Through many tribulations you must enter the kingdom. He said it in every single church. This is basic discipleship. If you lead somebody to Christ tonight, I'll tell you what you should tell them tomorrow morning. Through many tribulations you will enter the kingdom. Count on it. This afternoon things are going to go bad for you. If you don't start your discipleship program that way, you're setting them up for a big misunderstanding of the nature of Christianity. The backdrop of our lives is pain. Tribulation is generally a reference to the way people treat us. However, the word simply means pressure, oppression, and that can come from cancer as well as catastrophes as well as enemies. And in principle, the pain that comes into your life comes for the same design from Satan and the same design from God, whether it's from people or from nature. Satan's design is destroy your faith. God's design is build your faith. Refine your faith. Make your gold shine. And Satan is destroy your gold. Doesn't matter whether men are causing the pain, hurricanes causing the pain, disease is causing the pain, kids are causing the pain, wife is causing the pain, I'm causing the pain. It doesn't matter where the pain's coming from. Satan's got a design, God's got a design. They're opposites. So tribulation, oppression, difficulty, pain, trouble is the backdrop of the Christian life. If you don't have any, you will. So just to put it gently, you will. Because the Bible says those who want to live a godly life will be persecuted. Now, against that backdrop, let's weave the other pieces in. Rejoice in hope. Now that makes sense against that backdrop, right? Because frankly, right now, what's happened to me does not feel real happy. But I'm supposed to rejoice. Always. And again, I say rejoice. How? Hope. We Christians know that we've been rescued for everlasting joy. We groan, waiting our adoption, the redemption of our bodies. We wait, and groan. So the future grace is where our hope is fixed. And that hope streams back into the present and gives us present joy now, in the midst of this very tribulation. In fact, if you remember chapter 5, he makes it even more radical. Remember what he says? Not only that, but we rejoice in tribulation, for tribulation works patience, and patience works approvedness, and approvedness works hope, and hope does not put us to shame. So even the tribulation itself is working in us that which makes our hope more sure. So you don't just put hope over against tribulation as something that you now rejoice in spite of, but actually because of the tribulation. Tribulation is working patience. Patience is working approvedness, a sense of metal being tested. And that is confirming your hope, and hope is letting joy stream back into your life. Then, born out of that joy in hope through tribulation, you get this word, patience. How are you going to hang in there forever? We got a whole conference coming in September up in Minneapolis with John MacArthur coming and Jared Bridges coming and Helen Roseveare in her early 80s coming, who was a missionary in Congo and was raped and endured so much and has held firm, and Randy Alcorn, who lost his job, had to give up his ministry because he was sued by so many abortion clinics. He had to go on minimum wage, which he is on to this very day. And the reason I'm assembling all these folks to come talk about standing is because I just fear for our generation, our younger generation, constancy. Sticking in there, doing the hard thing, staying in your marriage, staying in your promises, staying in your contracts, keeping your word, finishing the job, keeping your hand on the plow is not a high virtue. Moving, shifting, change, diversity, newness, that's the name of the game. Just have 5 different jobs in your life, moving up the ladder, change is always possible, moving, even among marriages. And I just want constancy to be elevated as a virtue. And I just thought if I bring in all these old people, they're all old, that maybe I could get together a few thousand folks and they would look and say, wow, they did it. They stood. MacArthur, 40 years, one place, doing the same thing over and over. How do you do that? And have life. I was with him just a few months ago up at Southern Seminary, sitting in the basement, and just looked into his eyes and said, I'm more excited about what I do today than I ever have been. And he's just with a group of 4 people. He's not impressing any crowd by saying that. He's just saying it because it's true. And that's the way I feel. I'm on vacation a little bit after this. I want to go home and I just want to do it again. I want to be there for Bethlehem. I want to preach. I want to be strong to the end. And that's what I see here in this word, patient. Patient, enduring in tribulation. So it comes from hope, which streams into joy, which streams into patience.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Light and Truth, where we are committed to providing God-centered preaching to help you see Christ clearly and treasure Him truly. I'm your host, Dan Kruver. On our next episode, John Piper continues our 13-part series, Transformed by Mercy, with a message titled, When Mercy Overcomes the World. I hope you'll join us. For more resources, visit desiringgod.org.